Okay, so today we are propagating some Denton kale. This is a variety of kale which is very old, developed in Taunton. It's called Taunton Deane, and it traveled to France to become Denton kale. The name was distorted. It's essentially a perennial kale. It will last 8, 9, 10 years depending on how often you harvest and cut it. The plant does not go to flower. I'll show you in a second how the plant looks like. And here we go, after a big run. And this is how the plants look like in our agroforestry system. And they become pretty big bushes if you keep cutting them. So perhaps I'll do another video about managing these for agroforestry and for continual production. But essentially we make a big cut the first year in the middle, so you can see it here, and then the plant pushes out. And because of its physiology, it's a plant that has a lot of buds, and at each internode you'll find there will be at least two small shoots coming out. You can see it here, 1 and 2. So if we made a cut here, there's no apical dominance from this branch, let's call it, from this stem anymore, and so this auxin, which stops the growth of the dormant buds, will not be there anymore after the cut, and therefore these two wake up and start competing for the top, and essentially you get a very bushy habit plant. And today we're going to propagate it in order to sell some plants on our courses, because this is a very rare plant in the Mediterranean, but really tasty. This is one of the best tasting kales I personally have ever tried. It's got a thick texture, but when you cook it, it goes really soft, and it's better than normal kale for flavor, in my opinion. It's got kind of slightly Cavallonero-ish aroma. So we are going to get from these cuttings here, I'll show you in a minute, we will get some plants going, and in about a month or two we should have plants ready to sell or plant. The idea would be to colonize the entirety of this row with these, because they do an amazing job of protecting the trees from wind, cold, hot, because they shade out the roots. And these are plum trees here, and also they produce, every time you cut them, not only a lot of produce, but also they stimulate the neighboring plants. So in this case the trees, and there are some berries here which haven't come back after the winter yet. So this is a great time to cut and harvest this plant, because it tastes really good after the frost. And also this is when the trees are starting to open their buds, so they need a boost, a stimulation. So we're going to harvest a lot of this, and the rest we're going to take cuttings from. And we're back in the greenhouse. So setup is very simple. Just substrate, propagating substrate for seeds and cuttings, square pots for space efficiency. Then we're going to process these, I'll show you in a minute, and then we stick them in there. And if you have some rooting hormone, you can use that, and otherwise you use some willow water. So you put willow leaves in water, let them ferment a bit, and then you use that liquid to treat the cuttings and water the first time the pots. So here we go, this is the cutting we're going to put in the pot. I'm just sticking it in there, and I've removed all the leaves apart from the top one. So we went from this guy to that guy, and the cut was made right below a node where the leaves have been removed. So here I can make a straight cut, and that's what you dip in rooting hormone or willow water. Remove all the leaves, leave the top leaf just for some photosynthesis, but you want the plant to focus on making roots, and it needs to do very little photosynthesis, because most of the energy for that is in the stem, in the starch and the sap that's already in the stem. So the bigger the stem, actually, the more likely this is to root. You don't want to go woody, so it's got to be green, lustrous growth, but also you don't want to have a very thin bit, like only the tip, because the more reserves of energy, the more likely this plant is to root. Also Roger likes the perennial kale.